Hi and welcome to the New Investors My Story. Today we are talking to the three founders of one of Australia's much loved beer brands. Please welcome Young Henry's founders, Oscar McMahon, Richard Adamson and Dan Hampton. Hi guys, how are you?
Good, thanks for having us.
Good.
Glad to have you here. You guys, it's been 7 or 8 years since you started Young Henry's. Can you tell me how you guys first met?
So Oscar and I first met across the bar. So Oscar was working at my local pub. I was with a company called Barron's Brewing. I wanted to do something a little bit different. So I was kind of working through that. Oscar and I got talking first about music, I think. Oscar plays in bands. I used to play in bands. We lamented the fact that you never made any money out of rock and roll.
Yeah.
And we formed the beer club just to explore different beers with some of the punters around there and some of our friends.
So what was the beer club?
It was called Beer Club. And I think at one point I said to Oscar, it'd be great if we had a brewery that was as in touch with the drinkers as this little beer club was, and that was kind of the genesis of Young Henry's.
Oh, nice. So where was this bar in Sydney?
It was the Roxbury Hotel in Glebe.
Oh,
So
okay.
a friend owned it, and I thought that bartending was a suitable vocation for someone playing in a band because you can take nights off and all that sort of stuff, and actually sort of really fell in love with bartending and hospitality.
Yeah.
And beers. That's sort of where I really started getting interested in beers, and meeting Rich became this sort of, I guess, the starting point for our sort of beer adventure. And it was, there was absolutely nothing in my past that made me think that I had the ability or skills to start a brewery.
No.
But it just sounded like a great idea, and so we just sort of followed up on a drunken conversation and started meeting in cafes or pubs, working on the idea of what this brewing business was going to be.
And then was it from there when you realised people are really interested that we've got a sort of a business idea here?
I think it was two things. It was definitely the enthusiasm for exploring different beers, but it was probably that sense of community and like-mindedness as well that I thought was probably also something that's been very important in our company.
Yeah.
That has followed through from that original sort of meeting and genesis of the idea.
When did you actually say, right, okay, we're going to set up the brewery? Whose idea was it?
It was something that I was going to do and had to do.
Okay.
It was, I was just driven to make it happen. But it was been formulating what Young Henry's was going to be. Even the name really came from working with Oscar.
Where did the name come from?
I think that's we can blame Oscar on the other end.
Yeah, it was just one of those things. We were sitting at a cafe on Missenden Road, working on the business plan for this unnamed brewery at this stage, and Rich was sort of doing a bit of daddy daycare at the time, and he had his son Henry with him, and it was just a throwaway comment like, "Oh, we should call it Young Henry's because he'll be the third shareholder," or something like that.
No way. So your son's Henry.
Yeah, so we just put it down as like, oh yeah, Young Henry's, working title.
We'll come up with a better name eventually, but we never did.
We never did.
It's stuck.
Yeah.
And so Dan, when did you enter the fold?
Yeah, I'm kind of like a fake founder, but while these guys were doing this, I hadn't met them yet, and I was working for Little Creatures, which was one of the bigger independent beer companies at the time, and part of the reason these guys did Beer Club was because Sydney was just really starting to catch on that there was something going on with craft beer. Melbourne had probably caught on a little bit earlier. WA definitely had as well. But we were right in the middle of it, and I'd started Beer Snobs, which was very similar to what they were doing, was getting, getting people interested in it and trying to get the word out there. There was a lot beyond just the mainstream stuff. And Little Creatures had just got bought by one of the big guys, so I was had a little bit of money, not much, in my pocket, and wanted to do something, and was looking for an opportunity. And through Beer Snobs, these guys had just opened the doors, and some beer was coming out. I'd heard about it, went and caught up with them, and we all kind of clicked pretty soon after, and And it was funny. There was these guys were both brewing. Oscar were both brewing, and Oscar was probably a bit more brand focused, even though they created it together, the brand.
Yeah.
And then Oscar kind of said to me, "Hey, we've just realised we don't have anyone doing sales," which was what I did, which was kind of not even needed at that stage because how much we could make was just getting consumed by locals anyway, which is great. Gave me a bit of time, but I came in, borrowed a bit of money as well, and threw it in and became a shareholder and head of sales.
And so when you're talking about getting the capital together, what sort of capital would you need to get that first beer off the ground and onto shelves?
Yeah, there's a reasonable amount needed. I think we did it on the smell of an oily rag to start with, and we've obviously invested a lot as we've gone along. I'd probably do it differently in hindsight, but I think we did it at about 800.
So what would you have done differently?
I think there's some pieces of equipment and some infrastructure that you'd need, particularly around quality. I think, and
I don't know. You're right, but that's hindsight, isn't it? I think we did what we did, and it was. I don't know. There's a lot of authenticity that comes with just the bare minimum.
Yeah.
See if it works. Reinvest a bit when there's enough people drinking it. And I get it. Yeah, now you probably look back and go maybe different, but I think it gave a lot of that cred.
I remember some of those nights while we were building the brewery, just waking up in the middle of the night, just freaking out, thinking, how are we ever going to pay this back? And
I can imagine.
So like that sort of crippling fear of just jumping off into the deep end, and hindsight being, oh yeah, we should have actually built a brewery about 10 times the size of our original brewery. But
So with that fear and anxiety, thinking, okay, we're about 800 grand in debt now, and we don't know if this is going to work. How did you push through that, or what was it that made you stay on the track?
It just meant that failure was not an option. We just had to get in and get it done. We weren't able to pay ourselves. We weren't able to employ people initially.
Yeah.
So if there was something that needed to be done, we were doing it. And that actually has created a really good basis for our work culture. And also we were founders who were operating our business. We were running our business. We were kegging the beer. We were delivering the beer. We were doing sales. If something went wrong, we were fixing it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
I do have memories of a Friday afternoon, me kegging the beer, putting it in the truck for Oscar to go and deliver it, and there'd be thirsty people at the bar giving Oscar a round of applause as he turned up with a keg.
And that's what it was, wasn't it? It was literally Friday afternoon. We used to have customers from pubs pulling their utes up. Yeah. And they were just standing there talking to each other, waiting for the keg to fill, to roll it, to put it on, off they go. And so punters, for the first probably year, were drinking hours old beer, which is beer's best fresh. So we still try and stick as close to that as you grow. But when you're selling 1,500 kegs a week,
maybe not quite as skinny as that now. Yeah,
it's also it's a really funny memory, that one, because around the time when we started, there was 120 to 150 brewers in Australia. There's now 620.
Yeah.
Licensees are not going to drive to your brewery and hang around waiting for kegs anymore. Yeah, mate, you don't have them, that's fine. Yeah. I've got the phone number of 50 other brewers who will deliver within the next hour, So we got in at a really lucky time where the hospitality industry, as well as heaps of people, were getting excited by craft beer, and they let us get through those initial teething periods of getting production right. Yeah. They supported us through that.
And what was it? Why do you think that was? Was it because you'd nailed a great beer, that first beer?
I reckon it was a bunch of things, and it's easier for me to talk about this because it was these guys that started it. But initially, outside looking in, it wasn't just about the beer. There was quite a few, as I said, it was like 150 brewers at the time. Yeah. But no one had a brand quite like what Young Henry's was all about. The beer was really important. The quality of the beers were a bit different. Doing a lager in those early days was a bit weird for people because craft beer was all about the bigger ales. Yeah. So the styles a bit different, but they were well made. people were coming in and there was lots of really loud music and people hanging out with, probably didn't look like your traditional brewers at that stage. So there was a lot of interest getting generated and for me being able to come in at that point and then sitting down with Oscar, both of them really, and talking about, okay, what are the fundamentals? Because I kind of had got it because I was hanging out a lot, but we're going to start hiring people. What is our ethos? What do we believe in?
Right.
And so that, I think you can have good beer, but it's not going to be enough. You can have a good brand, it's not going to be enough. You've got to have quite a few things go right. You've also got to have a bunch of people who communicate well and are all there committed to work hard at the right time. So timing was another thing.
Yeah, because when we said to people that were interviewing the Young Henry's guys, the response was, "Oh, they're really cool," or "That brand is so cool." What would be those values or for your business that make you like really cool?
It's an interesting question though.
So cool.
That we had a document that we'd write when we first started, and we went back probably only a couple of years ago and looked at that, and it was good to see that those brand values were still.
Yeah.
A couple of things had changed, but really the essence of it was still there, and it was. I think one of the things we talk about a lot is community, and it's we Oscar and I, coming from a rock and roll background, it was bringing some of our friends into what we did. So, we're doing collaborations with rock bands. I think a lot of people do that now, but 8 years ago that wasn't necessarily the case. And really showcasing what we thought was things that inspired us, and then hopefully the beer could inspire them to go on further.
Yeah.
And also do a little bit of that sort of cross-pollination of fans as well. So fans of the band might get a sense of who we are through that partnership.
Yeah. So is that kind of culture, community?
Yeah, I think it's about being accessible, having fun, being authentic. That's a really big one. Everything we did, we ended up with the phrase, but what's the YH way? Because you'd have an idea, but your idea is just you've seen someone else do it. And so you kind of go, okay, that's cool. That's a cool idea. We don't need to reinvent the wheel, but how do we do this the YH way? Yeah. And I think when you get the right people involved, and we've got 80 staff now, so every time we hire someone, they don't have to look exactly like us, although a lot do, but they need to believe in what we believe in. And so if fundamentally we're there to be accessible to all and be a really, as I said, genuine and authentic people, and understanding, and being in Newtown, that's what Newtown's like. So it's quite a true reflection of what the community is anyway.
Yeah.
And people want to come on that ride. I did, and then it's and I always think of me previous to Young Henry's and me after, it sounds getting emotional. But no, it sounds like I think there's a lot of people who come out of it being better people because it's a very understanding brand, and I think that's a really strong part. People see that, and when you're authentic, people go, cool, and the beer's good.
So, but beer consumption is going down over the last 20 years, but the industry has grown by 200% in the last 7 years. Why is that, do you think?
I think a lot of people are moving towards less but better. People are happy to spend a little bit more. People are buying 6-packs. People are going into bottle shops and buying mixed 6-packs. We've got there's so much selection. People are happy to spend a little bit more on a beer that is more of an experience, which was not the case, back in the day. And that, you're seeing that, continuing on a pretty big scale year on year.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a kind of used to just be you had your beer brand and that was all you drank.
Yeah.
Your dad drank it, you drank it.
Same thing.
Yeah, whereas now I think the coffee industry, the wine industry, they probably came a little bit before the craft beer scene. We're following on from the American scene as well. It's doing the same thing, but it's about adventure. It's about knowing more, seeing behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And so with consumers of everything these days, they want that. And so that just fit right into the craft beer world of people going to walk into our brewery in Newtown and watch the guys making and kegging and doing all that stuff. And in the first bit, we didn't have an office. We were literally in the tasting bar, and Oscar ended up getting a hard hat that said, "Can your question wait?" Because everyone just wanted to ask Oscar everything, and it was so funny. He's just trying to get something done.
Yeah.
And it was, mainly staff. But then obviously you had to take the hat off when customers came in. But they love that, and you learn a lot. You get a lot of feedback, good or bad.
And what about young people though? Young people they're not drinking as much alcohol. They want are like mid-strength beers. Is that a thing that you're seeing?
Yeah, certainly. When I think we looked at our Stayer, our mid-strength beer, probably 18 months ago when we first started talking about it, and a lot of people saying there's not really a category for craft mid-strength. What are you doing? It doesn't make a lot of sense. But we thought it did. And I think it's as kind of the industry matures too, that there's probably a bit more mindful consumption at the same time. So certainly Stayer is the most drunk beer at the brewery.
Oh, it is now.
Yeah, but that's probably because of the staff.
Right.
But which is also a good thing, I think. So that means that people do want to still enjoy a beer, but get up the next day and work hard.
It's a really funny thing that, our whole crew are pretty passionate beer drinkers. You know, why would you work for a brewery if you weren't?
Fair enough.
And to think that they're all now, I reckon they'd all be shocked to think that they started working for a brewery and now they're all mid-strength drinkers. It's it's a really cool thing. They care about the flavour. They want to have a couple. They, might need to drive home. It's cool. I think it's actually better for the longevity of the mental health of our people as well.
I was going to say that. So how do you manage? Because you all guys had to taste the beers to get it right. How do you sort of manage that drinking culture within?
Not well at first, to be honest. Okay. We've all had that moment. I remember I was up in Brisbane for a while setting the team up there, and we'd had a few events in a row, and we go there and socialise and therefore struggle through the hangover the next day. And I remember ringing Oscar at one point going, I'm out. I'm sick of this. I can't handle these hangovers. I think I was getting near 40 and I just couldn't deal with it anymore. But 2 days later I was fine. But it was, I just needed to know I could if I wanted to. But no, it's something that we're really working hard on at the moment about balance. And I think individually we've probably found a bit of balance, and then it's now trying to intercept that with our staff before they get there to that sort of breaking point, because it's just, all it is just you're just cloudy and you're sick of feeling cloudy. That's all. And but that's with kids these days. That's as going back to that.
So what would you do? So what would be some of the strategies that you do then to manage that?
I was going to say, I think well-being is something that companies are starting to realise is actually like it's not just a warm and fuzzy. It's actually a bottom line thing as well. So having your people in a good state of mind and healthy is important.
Sure,
so I love like the sales team were doing regular dance sessions. I thought that was good fun.
What kind of
good
dance?
for health.
Yeah, so that kind of thing. We had one girl that works with us. She's a professional dancer and she's phenomenal. And she would take everyone and teach them some. They'd all get dressed up in leotards and stuff, and there's 30 guys and girls looking pretty out of shape, most people, I think, but that's it. We start to say to people, look, if you feel you need a bit of a break, that's fine.
Yeah.
Or really just about start managing your week a bit better, and if you need to start a little bit later to go and get some exercise, and we sort of encourage them to eat healthy, and have a couple of alcohol-free days just to get the balance back.
It sounds like the three mates setting up a beer company. It sounds like a lot of people's dream. But what would be some of what would a day-to-day look like for you at the moment?
Well, at the moment, it is very different to how it was originally. I guess for the three of us, in any one day, we'll be signing off somewhere between 2 to 5 products. We'll be having meetings to do with finance, to do with HR. We're sitting across, meetings with our quality control team, doing yeast analysis. Some really exciting stuff.
Yeah.
But I think the most importantly, we've now got people in positions as we've grown to allow us to think what's next. So it gives us a bit of headspace, and that's probably what we're doing a bit more of at the moment. Either what are the big ticket items that we're doing, like what's the big music festival that we're going to be part of next?
Yeah.
And then also, what does the market look like? What do we think the market looks like in a couple of years' time? What can we be doing now? Either by is there a different product that we think might be popular, or how, what are the trends that we can see coming from overseas that we might get ahead of a little bit?
What do you think some of the big ones are?
Some of the ones, I guess by SKU, there's a few that you've got to look at that are really big in the US. Like we saw IPA get really big in the US, and then we thought it was going to be really big in one particular year. But it probably took another couple of years to become big. But now it is really big. But sour beers are quite big. We don't do much in that world yet, but we might.
Yeah.
Barrel aging. It's the US is a good one to look at because we have always followed it. But then you've got to look at our own market and say what do we think is going to catch on and what doesn't.
What about sustainability, like having a brand that is for beer drinkers? Like a lot of young people are looking to brands in general that have a sustainable culture.
Yeah, so look, I think we were one of the first breweries to have a community solar panel initiative put on our roofs. So the solar panels are actually owned by people around the brewery, so maybe they couldn't participate in solar power generation. Because they live in flats or whatever, so they can own a piece of the solar panels on the roof, and we pay them for that. So that's generating a fair bit of our electricity, and we're always exploring what we could do better. We're on a move to be not carbon neutral but carbon negative in a couple of years' time.
Brilliant.
Tinnies, so we moved from bottles to cans because cans are a lot better for the environment. They're infinitely recyclable, and because the packaging is a bit smaller, you don't have the dead space that the bottle has. You can fit more on a pallet, therefore more on a truck, therefore less trucks getting around.
Yeah.
So
You can fit 30% more beer onto a pallet if you're using cans as opposed to bottles.
Yeah, bottles
So
weigh
it's
are quite a bit heavier.
Yeah.
But also things like we've got a high efficiency brewery that uses less water. The grain is much drier, so it's better for the farmers that come and pick up the grain. So we're kind of looking at that back end as well.
There's lots of questions coming through from the audience, so we'll just flick to a couple of those and then we can jump back in. So, this is from Glyn. What's the role of beer club or beer snobs in your brewing process today, and does it still exist?
Once we set up Young Henry's, we actually handed over the reins of Beer Club because we thought that it was a bit of a conflict. And
It's still running, as I understand.
it is still running.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
So
but
what form does it take?
I think one of the things that is still a parallel is that in Beer Club it was very communal and it was very much about conversations and sharing of ideas and excitement.
Yeah.
And when we're coming up with beer ideas, it's not us making a decision in a vacuum. It is really collaborative with different people from our team, different people in our brewing team, our sales team, our marketing team. And it is that open discussion of, basically if we can find something that we're all excited by, that's probably going to be the right thing.
It's probably also the tasting bar, right? So it's right there at the brewery where people can come and try the beers, and we get direct feedback from that. And also a lot of the pubs, bars and restaurants that are around come down and get to hang out, and we get to get that first-hand experience of what are people enjoying out there.
But Beer Club was needed at a time when people couldn't easily get craft beer. Now they can.
Now they can. But do you miss those days? Like you were playing, you were in a band, the Hell Glamour, what was it?
Hell City Glamours.
Hell City Glamours, and you were in a band as well. But now you're massive business owners. Like, what's been the hardest thing about that? Do you miss those days?
Look, we worked really, really hard to start with, so I don't necessarily miss that. But it was probably a more agile company in the early days. So if we were thinking on our feet a lot. So if we came up with the beer idea, we could probably do it in a matter of days, and it would be out in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
But now, because the ship is a lot bigger, we have to do a lot more forward planning. So that idea probably has to get into a queue, and there's a whole bunch of things that we need to tick off that happens now. So there's got to be a marketing idea behind it. They've got to get these, a whole bunch of people involved. So that's I kind of miss that a little bit, to be honest.
So staying agile though is one of the things that made you successful at the beginning. So is there a way? Are you striving to be able to?
When we
stay
say
agile?
so you're right though. We are agile compared to the big guys. I went to hear some talks on marketing to the current market, and they were talking about how the big beer companies are trying to do lots of little touch points and activations, because if you do one big marketing idea, if it falls flat, you're buggered, kind of thing. And that is what we do. So I guess we did 22 beers in 1 year, and every week we're coming up with a new idea. So there's a happy medium, and I think we're probably at the happy medium.
Probably more the fact that it's not just Oscar's idea or my idea now. It used to be quite a selfish thing that we could just do it.
Yeah,
so there's a lot more other points to consider, a lot more different opinions, and we've got to give other people a crack at it as well.
We used to, if one of us came up with a good pun, we would make a beer around the pun. Like it was some
Brilliant.
ridiculous stuff going on in the early years.
Give us an example. Is there any good
Mother
examples?
Shucker,
Yeah, the mother shucker.
an oyster stout named
Yep.
after your mum.
Yep.
What, she's an amazing shucker of oysters.
Oh, so you
It's not offensive, by the way.
They were not-
I was thinking I don't
He's
want to
got a
know.
lovely mother who actually looks
Okay.
after our garden at the front of the brewery. as
That's lovely. That's lovely.
well.
Sorry.
Brew My for the You and My beer, Foo Town Lager for the Foo Fighters beer.
The Brutang clam ain't nothing to shuck with. Yeah. Personal
Great.
We had a
favourite.
whole series of seafood dark beers that were all just pun based.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Oscar, you mentioned there are now over 600 beers amongst your competitors. How do you keep evolving to stay popular, and what can we expect from Young Henry's?
I think one of the things that we've always been good at is we don't do market research when we don't have a target demographic. We
Right.
always try to do things the YH way, which is staying true to what we feel is exciting. And when I say we, I mean, people in our company.
Yeah.
We hire incredibly intelligent, switched on, creative people.
Yeah.
We're never short of ideas.
Mm-hmm.
We have got a list of ideas sort of just on file.
Waiting to
That is never, we're never short of inspiration or ideas. So we have this great sort of perpetual forward motion. We're a creative company. We're doing things all the time with other creatives, making beers or events with chefs, musicians, artists. So I think that Young Henry's tries to keep itself inspired. Mm-hmm. It tries to keep itself being creative, and through that, we're constantly evolving.
I think the big thing is making sure that we have our core range, getting into as many people's mouths through pubs and bars and bottle shops as possible.
That's a great way to say it.
And it's funny when you say something a lot, it does sound, yeah. But then also coming up with the unique beers to keep the brewers and our staff interested, but also to try and draw more people towards the brand.
I've been really inspired by going out and visiting our the farmers of our hops and malts. So going to see what innovations coming from them, what new varietals of hops are coming out, getting our brew team in and really getting a sense of that this is an agricultural product we're making. It does come from the ground.
The whole ecosystem.
And meet the farmer that the blood, sweat and tears that goes into growing the stuff that we turn into beer. I think that's very inspiring. And then turning it over to that brew team to go and make something fun from what's happening here, and really respect what's what you've been given to work with.
Yeah. How necessary is social media for your brand? That's from Anastasia.
Yeah, it's funny. It's changed a lot in the last few years. I think early days it was pretty simple. You had a Facebook page, you had Instagram and kind of Twitter at the time too, and you would just put cool things on there that you were doing or relevant to your community, and that would be it. That was your marketing. That was all you had to do. But it's a lot trickier now. We've got a great few people on a team that look after our social media, and first and foremost, we had to sort of teach them how to speak the Young Henry's way, which is kind of funny because it was just us doing it. But then to keep the consistent voice, we had to talk about that first. But then that was pretty easy. They were very like-minded people. But now it's a lot more about being smart about your investment in the social media sort of. It's changed a lot.
Does it drive? Does it drive a lot of your sales?
Not sales. It's just brand awareness and keeping everyone up to date with what we're doing.
Yeah.
I think social media, I mean, if you think about like what a community is, it is a collection of like-minded people that are living in a geographical area because they probably have shared values.
Yeah.
Social media is that without a geographical boundary. It is a bunch of like-minded people who are interested in either the values or the goings-on of someone that they're watching. So for us who have created a brand that, you know, we love Young Henry's. You know, Young Henry's has a soundtrack. It has a dress sense. It has a tone of voice.
Yeah.
It has a bunch of products that are easily accessible. You know, we have values. Social media actually becomes how we personalize and create. We take our brand to the people.
Yeah.
It's the most important part of our marketing activity because it is showing all the different facets of this brand and company that we love, and allowing other people to be a part of it.
Absolutely.
The surprising thing for me has probably been the return of the e-newsletter. I would have thought that would have died with
Still
social
around.
media, but you know, we only we sort of started up fairly recently, probably in the last couple of years, and it's well subscribed and loved, and a lot of people like enjoy the content. I guess it's because we do talk about a lot of the people that we work with that aren't necessarily in the company. So whether we showcase an artist, whether it be a graphic artist or graffiti or a musician, so it's more of a kind of cultural kind of touch
but it's
point.
run by you guys. Yeah.
And I actually enjoy reading it too, so I'll look out for it.
Yeah. I'll sign up. Would you come out with a gluten-free beer for us celiacs?
You know what? I'm gluten intolerant. We've actually looked into it.
Oh, really?
I'm Oscar intolerant now.
It's an interesting one. So there's not actually a whole bunch of gluten left after the brewing process, to be honest. And we have had it all tested. The cider is gluten-free. It's even if we can get it really low, there's still if you're celiac and not just gluten intolerant, it can be touchy. So you're probably better off using grains that haven't been or don't contain gluten, and they're very difficult to work with, and you kind of got to specialize in that. But I think if you just gluten intolerant and not celiac, probably the lower probably the Newtown is probably the best one because it doesn't contain wheat or oats. You know,
it has been discussed though, and it is something that we'll probably look at
Explore.
in the next year.
For now, they stick to cider.
or gin.
Yeah. Oh, you're doing gin now too. Yeah. How's that going?
Look, surprisingly well. We didn't do a lot with it. We naively thought that the beer sales would slow down and we'd have some time to focus on selling gin. That didn't happen.
Well, it's a good thing. Good problem
But
to have.
it's slowly worked its way up through word of mouth, and I think a lot of the times it's been the pub groups coming in and having a few drinks at the bar after being shown around the brewery. They go, "Oh, you got a still? Let's try the gin." They go, "Oh, wow, this is really good.
Yeah.
Can we stock this?" So that's it's been a slow burn.
Basically, we just got so used to beer hangovers, we needed to
Have a different
pop them up a bit.
Yeah, the beer pong games
Started
turned into
distilling.
gin pong games, which was disaster town. Just before my phone call to Oscar, I think.
Is there another part of the hospitality industry you'd like to take on, like food or snacks or coffee?
No.
Okay, that's fine. What do you think of the big breweries, and how have you managed to survive as an independent brewery, or do you have intentions of setting up? That's probably
I'll
our
cover
last
the
question.
first bit. It's kind of the devil you know, and they've always been there, and I think we've been really good at working around it. So to explain that, most of our beer sales started with kegs to pubs, and most pubs have a contract with one or both of the big guys to own a portion of the taps. It used to be when we first started, there was 100% tap contracts out there, or 90%.
Yeah.
They're probably mostly down to around 70% now.
Yeah.
But we've always been pretty good at convincing publicans to put us on that spare tap. So it's never really hurt us that much.
Okay.
Except for the
So-
fact that in marketing terms, if we're in a negotiation over a festival or an event, we're now negotiating against these multinational businesses. So we find ourselves in this really odd position of being a large independent who is having to basically negotiate against, international huge giants. Yeah. So that's kind of a little bit, it's a little bit frustrating, but what is great is that the value proposition of partnering with an independent company is actually really attractive to a lot of people who run events and festivals. So because we probably have more in common with them and their punters than, say one of the big brewers.
Yeah.
So the value that we can add actually is now getting sort of accounted for.
Yeah, sure.
So I've got a lot of friends who are brewers with the big guys, and the thing about brewers is that they just love beer. So I think all that politics gets put aside when you just get to sit around and talk kind of turkey over a couple of beers and really talk about the technical sort of aspects. So that's one part where we've always sort of remained friends. But aside from the competition side, in terms of selling, no, we haven't. Yeah.
Richard, Dan, and Oscar, thanks a million for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.